Greetings and welcome everybody. Welcome back to Robocraft and to a patch update. It has been a few days since I've uploaded any Robocraft content, and that has largely been because I've been waiting for the patch to go live. As you may know, I have been running a little bit of a kind of a mini-series at the moment where I've been exploring the new features as they're introduced in the lower tiers. So from the eyes of a new player. But I was aware that this next patch was going to change the order in which the last component, that is the shields and the towers, were added. In fact, they are now added and have kind of made the third video in that series a little bit redundant, but they would have absolutely made the fourth video redundant, so I thought it would best just to wait the extra 2 or 3 days and record a new video then. Now, let's get started with probably one of the biggest changes, or at least the one that'll have the largest effect on bots as they are right now, discounting the meta changes, and that is the Electroplate changes. Electroplates now overclock the shield up to 180% at overclock level 13. That didn't happen before. So shields have now become the only real armor component that overclocks how well it can defend. It also has the same cooldown and recharge overclocks as it used to have. So shields at this point have gone from being something that I was starting to lean away from personally to something that has now got a very, very big push. It's got definitely a new lease on life in terms of its usability and how useful it's going to be, especially at the higher tiers. Electroplates will start off uncharged when they respawn and when you're healed. So when you first get an Electroplate bolted back on through a nano beam, it's going to be disabled. It's going to have its charge time. So bear that in mind. You're not going to be able to just take a very heavily shielded bot into the middle of a fight, counting on your allies to just keep repairing the shields as they pop off, knowing that they'll be at full charge when they come back. That won't be the case. Now, another big change is that at tier 10, new versions of all the shields become available. That is all of the previous shapes of shields. They're tier 10 equivalent shields, but in all of the varieties of shapes. That is going to allow for some truly amazing shielded designs at tier 10, and is probably going to be something that I'm going to be looking into quite a lot once I'm done with this last video that's upcoming for the meta changes and how they get fed into the new players. But going back to the patch notes, we have got the clock cycle booster and clock cycle generator. Now, as you may be watching in the battle that I'll have playing in the background, these have actually changed up how towers work in a fairly big way. Instead of just being a case of once you've got the more towers you own, the more overclock you get, or the more towers you own, the sooner the enemy's shield is going to go offline. Each tower now has a different effect. That is, each tower you own, not each individual tower has a certain effect. That might actually be an interesting mechanic if specific towers on the map had specific effects, so you'd try and capture certain ones with a priority. But as it stands, it's just the number you own. Now, probably the biggest change that this is going to that's going to be obvious to you at the start is that you're not going to have a shield at the start of the game. Your shield is down. You don't have the healing. There's no shield. When you capture your first fusion tower, your shield will activate. So until that first tower is captured, you don't even have protection over your main reactor. The second tower that you capture will engage the clock cycle booster. So every clock cycle you earn will be boosted. The third will give you a passive clock cycle generator. So you'll just gain clock cycles passively without having to do anything, as long as you own at least 3 towers. And the fourth that you get will take down the enemy shield. Now, the last one, pretty standard, same thing that we've had with all the others. But the fact that you don't even have a shield until you get the first tower, that's a big thing. That's a very big thing. And there's now a new overlay at the top which will neatly show you this information. It'll light up the different icons to show you the shields are active, clock cycle booster is active, so on and so forth. Now, there's also 2 other parts on this display that are affected. Now, these are called the Proton Ivity Escalator and Respawn Escalator. Now, from what I understand, these improvements have been added specifically to try and help with keeping the game's length in a reasonable sort of time frame, because games could extend for quite some time previously. But now you're going to see them much more often fitting in the 10 to 20 sort of minutes range. And also to try and downplay a couple of the more cheesier tactics, not completely make them invalid, but make them harder to pull off. Now, the way it works is protonivity escalates as you own more towers. So the more towers you own, the more damage you're going to do to crystals. However, this will also escalate through game time. So the more towers you own in the sort of late game, the more damage you're going to do. If you own the same amount of towers in the early game, you're not necessarily going to get the same boost. So you're not really going to just be able to grab all the towers and just charge the base and wipe it out early game. I mean, you might if you're particularly playing well, but generally speaking, this is going to make late game pushes much, much more devastating. So it's going to give you a natural kind of limiter to how long the game is likely to last. Once one team has enough towers towards the late game, they're just going to push through and they're going to be able to wipe out the crystals on your reactor with impunitive ease. However, you've also got the respawn escalator, which, much like protonivity, means that you'll respawn faster the more towers that your team earns. In the early game, it's not going to be much of a reduction because it's kind of percentage based, but towards the late game, you're going to start seeing like 10 seconds per tower. That's quite a lot. Knocking 40 seconds off a respawn timer is actually a fairly big deal, to be perfectly honest. And towards the very late game, you might see protonivity escalations of 800% damage to crystals. That's, again, no small thing. Now, some of the changes to the look and shape of the towers, I'm sure many of you are already quite aware of these ones, if you've played the game at all since the patch went live. The umbrella shield is now transparent, so you can see enemies beneath them from above and flyers above them from below. Now, that's a pretty good thing. I mean, you could kind of be aware of it, and I do feel that it's kind of downplaying a little bit on the importance of spotting your enemies, because if you spot someone, you can see them through object, but I can see where they're coming from with this, especially if there's just someone kind of just hidden right beneath the tower shield. You might not notice it, like a little flyer's kind of lodged itself right underneath the shield on the inside. You might never see it. There's also an increased aperture to make it easier for flyers to attack from the sky. I think that's kind of needed, actually, because you did more or less have to be right above the tower in order to attack. Even with SMGs, it was quite difficult. They've also lowered the crystal cluster so that you can keep an eye on the horizon whilst you're shooting the crystals to see incoming enemies. So if you're lower down, if you're attacking from the ground, you don't have to be staying straight up to be able to be targeting the crystals. And they've reduced the width of the trunk of the tower, again, to increase visibility around. So generally speaking, they've done a lot to try and help with fusion towers being a blot on the landscape that have been obfuscating the movements of your enemies. You're going to be much more aware of your surrounding with that. Additionally, they've also added a little bit of tweaking to the classic game mode. I know a lot of people felt that they were ignoring that, and they have addressed some of the issues. Namely, that effectively bots in classic now start at overclock level of 4, which roughly speaking means that they will have the same kind of bot as they used to. Because when the overclock levels came through, at low overclock levels, a bot that was before all the overclocking patches came through would have been moving faster, doing more damage, that sort of thing. The idea was that at the beginning of the new game, you'd start off weaker and then grow in power as you go through. But obviously, classic game mode doesn't have the means to grow in power as you play through. So instead, now you'll have a static kind of overclock level of 4, which will be around what you were prior to the new game mode. Now, Carbon 6 Armor and Carbon Series 10 SMGs are new content. Carbon 6 matte black and orange armor cubes, available for both RP and GC. They also have lettered cubes, spelling carbon. You can mix and match these as you like, so anything that you can make with the letters involved in the word carbon, you can now spell out on your robot. I actually quite like the way they're going with this. We may see some interesting bots coming along, and we may also see some shenanigans, but, you know, you kind of take the good with the bad with that sort of thing. The new Carbon 6 cubes in both orange and black are also available for RP and GC, or rather the new Carbon 6 cubes, that is. All Carbon 6 armor cubes have T10 armor stats, so now you can look cool whilst you're acting tough. Interesting way of putting it. There is now a T10 Carbon 6 SMG, which is only Galaxy Cache. All of these automatically unlock and are available in the depot when you unlock the equivalent cube of that tech tree. So you're not going to have access to tier 10 armor cubes for Galaxy Cash or RP through the Carbon 6 armor before you've accessed tier 10 armor cubes at all. Now, another change that is being brought down the pipe that some may like, some may not, some may just not care about is the Steam logging and auto registration. They've added support so that Steam users can authenticate with Robocraft to create new accounts using their Steam ID, which would mean that there's less clicking, less places you need to register, and I know quite a lot of people like that. There are equally many people who dislike the idea of being attached to Steam, so you don't have to do it if you've already got an account, and you can still make accounts the normal way. You can play as normal, there's no difference. However, if you go through Steam, understand that it uses Steam's authentication API, so Robocraft has no access to any of your Steam details. It's just a matter of you going through Steam to log in. So, you know, there's those concerns, those privacy concerns have already been addressed. Now, as for other improvements, there are a lot of these. Plasma damage now overclocks to 160%. Plasma reload time reduce less to 80%, whereas previously it was 60%. So you can now get an extra 20% reduction on your reload time. Hover blades now turn more consistently. Tank Track's top speed is reduced by 10%. Max overclock speed also reduced by 10%. I know a lot of people will be happy with this because there was a lot of concern that tracks had basically become the new be-all, end-all because they've got such high damage mitigation, or rather damage absorption, such high HP, and could move quite quickly. There was like no drawback. They've improved the reliability of Tank Track's contact with the ground so that they don't snag as much. Rail cannons start armed on respawn. Now that is a very, very interesting one. I know a lot of people were hoping for that. They do not start armed after a heal. That may be added later, but not this time. I think they're just kind of testing the ground with that one. They don't want to add too much and then have to reel back to if it didn't work out too well. So they added in small baby steps with that one. But you may see that rails also start reloaded when they're healed on. I'm a little bit uncertain about the healing one, though I think the respawning one is a very, very good addition. Volume sliders added for the voice in the settings screen. I know a lot of people were looking for that. You can now leave the game in the middle of a game. There is a leave button, and that is a big thing. A lot of people were very frustrated with the fact that they couldn't get out of a fight when they were in a fight. And along with that, when players go AFK, the remaining team will spawn 10 seconds faster for each AFK'd or left player. Now, they are going to be looking at adding some new features to improve AFK and leaving battles. They'll be adding a surrender system, a karma system, to reward users who consistently finish battles even when they're going wrong. And I really like that. Because I guess it's playing to my strengths. I always finish a battle, even if it's going terribly. And when you get rewarded for that, well, you know, it's just a nice little bit of icing on the cake. I would have been doing it anyway, so yeah, it's cool. Free stuff for me. But hopefully it will dissuade people from just bailing out the moment something goes wrong, because you'd be surprised how often a battle will turn your way if you just keep going and just keep putting up a fight. There will also be wait and reconnect systems, meaning that users can't start a new battle when an existing battle is still in progress. I'm not sure how that's going to factor in. Perhaps if they just drop from the game, that would come in, but if they surrender and just acknowledge they're going to take the karma hit, maybe they'd be free to join another game. Otherwise, I'm not sure about that one. But hopefully these will be added in the next coming weeks. There's also an idea so you can reconnect to a game if your game crashes or you accidentally disconnect it or something like that. Now, also the ally HUD and health bars are visible on screen at all times. Health bars have been made wider and visually more clear, so it's easier to see who's on low health. Tier 1 now starts off with overclocker features, and this is the part that caused me to hold up on recording my next video. Tier 2 starts off with the fusion shield active and automatically deactivates at the 3 minutes into the battle, and Tier 3 now has the full fusion tower gameplay. So basically, previously Tier 1 had none of this. that's just been cut off now, so everything has been shunted down, so my tier 2 recording is equivalent to tier 1, my tier 3 recording is equivalent to tier 2, and I'm probably going to record a new tier 3 video, but I'll switch out my bot just slightly, and we'll have the full tower gameplay. But that, if you were wondering, is the reason that I was holding off for this patch to land. The TX1 SMG damage has been reduced by 10% as well, and they've also re-added 800 by 600 resolution, so hurrah for that. But with that, I have gone through all of the patch notes, and I'm going to get off and record the next episode straight away. There has been a bit of a delay with the Robocraft recordings lately, and again, largely due to the incoming patches changing something that I was going to be focusing on in the next video. But with that, I can get back to recording Robocraft more regularly once again. So rejoice at that, or at least I'm going to rejoice at that, because I've missed the bloody game. But that is it from me. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode and it has been informative, and I hope you will be joining me for the next. But until then, and as always, do take care.